الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كلام المجيد والفرقان الحميد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم خلقكم من نفس وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم: المسلم من سلم الناس من لسانه ويده، والمؤمن من آمنه الناس على دمائهم وأموالهم، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I start with the recitation of the Quran and the salutation upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May the blessings of Almighty Allah be upon him abundantly and forever. And I also extend a greeting of salam, the greeting of peace, to each and every single one of you. Welcome to today's Jumma speech. And once again, congratulations always to those who come early. May Allah accept your efforts. May Allah preserve a unique reward for each and every single one of you, and may He protect your families. Today's topic is something that's been chosen in order to highlight one of the most significant stories or lessons in history, in modern day Muslim history, that stains the history of Muslims forever in terms of the things that have happened and the lessons that we take forward. On the 11th of July, which is in a few days, marks the remembrance of a genocide that took place 26 years ago in the country or the region or the land of Bosnia, in the form of the genocide of Srebrenica, which is something that the cost implication was the loss of somewhere near over 80,000 innocent Muslim lives. And the 11th of July marks 26 years since that took place. So this took place in July 1995. And before we move forward into the order of events or what took place, I'd like to highlight some things that history has recognized about the events of Srebrenica, i.e. the genocide. First, it's important to understand what the meaning of the word genocide is. And then it's also important to understand what are the elements that fuel something like genocide. Why does it happen? And then how does that actually have relevance 26 years later today? How or what does that look like in today's society, in our communities today? So firstly, the word genocide, what's the meaning? That it's a large-scale killing intent on destroying a nation or a society wholly or partly because of their ethnic or their racial or their religious being, or the religious or the ethnic or a national group. So killing a bunch of people because they are who they are, in simple words. So taking the innocent lives of people. Why? Because they simply were who they were. And this is something that the Bosnian Serb militias did on the 11th of July 1995 in the regions of Rwanda. And this cost 8,372 Muslim lives, mainly men and boys. And then after these people were killed, what happened to them? That they were buried in mass grave sites. So literally their bodies were chucked under the ground. And then the women that they left behind, or the women that were left behind, what happened to them? That they were forced out of these lands. They were forced to leave. And the men that existed within their families were already killed. Why? We sit here today, 26 years later, and we still ask the question, why? Why is it that somebody had to die because of their ethnic appearance, or their national identity, or their religious identity? If we look at the three things that I've mentioned, your ethnic appearance. So in our community today, in this community of Al-Bulzali, we find Bangladeshi brothers, we find Pakistani brothers, we find people from the Arab countries. But nobody had a choice as to where they came from. We all are who we are because Allah created us this way. So if you're tall, it's because God made you tall. If you're short, it's Allah Almighty that made you like that. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're healthy, if you look a certain way, if you are a certain way, these are the things that Allah made you with. And then comes the religion. This is your choice. So in any of these things that I mentioned, nothing is your fault. And your choices of religion, when you choose to follow the religion of Islam, the religion of peace, you do not harm anyone. So why is it that you were killed? Because the people of that time had a disease. There was one thing that fueled the events of Srebrenica, that fueled the Bosnian militias to do what they did, to wipe people out, kill them for no reason, in the most horrific fashion that we can think of. And this is nothing other than hate. That we hate you for being different. So for somebody to be the way they are, or for you to be who you are, and someone hates you, that in their heart the hate is so great that they feel that there is no space for you on this land, and therefore you need to be removed. And this is what took place 26 years ago. Now you might ask a question thinking, why is it that we are remembering this today, and what relevance does this have in today's society? Before touching upon that, let's look at what Islam talks about in terms of hate and in terms of we be different. Now the Quran mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from male and female. And then what did He do to you? How did He separate you? He said, I then allocated you to tribes and nations. I made you different. I made some of you black, some of you white, some of you Asian, some of you in all forms of beauty. Why? What's the purpose of you and I being different? What is the purpose of you looking different, or being different, or talking different in comparison to someone somewhere else? Why? So that you can recognize one another. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to mention in the same ayah that who's actually the best out of all of you? It's the one who fears Allah the most, the one who is best in character. And this is also highlighted amongst many of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Islam says there is no space for hate. You can't hate someone for being who they are. What you can hate is a bad act. So even if you had within yourself, within your character, something that you did bad, I still cannot hate you. I can hate the act. And Islam encourages hating what's bad, i.e. hating the act. But Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, throughout his life, it examples of the Meccan period and examples of the period that he spent of his life in Medina. Countless examples that even though he hated the act of bad, he still showed love to the people. And this is what inspired nations after him to still follow the word of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So what's today's lesson? That firstly, in our communities, we need to ask ourselves, has there been an element of destruction for hating what's normal? We need to ask ourselves that if the remedy or the theme was hate at the time, people felt the remedy was to kill people because they didn't want them there. And this cost over 8,000 lives, innocent lives, and we don't even know the numbers of people that were driven out of their community. Does this cost still exist in our communities today? Do we still have an element of hate within our families? Do we still have an element of hate between those who believe and those who don't believe? Do we have an element of love and da'wah for those who don't believe, or do we just constantly, non-stop, just push out hate? And what does hate do? That it destroys the heart. We need to ask ourselves that what is it that we can do today? And let's look at the reality of our communities today. We've lost in history Muslim lives before. And the weakness of hate that was within the heart of the killers, are they still present within the heart of us today? In our family, in our day-to-day lives, do we have problems? Do we have arguments? Why? Because we can't let go of things in our heart. We hold on to events, we hold on to small things, and what does that create? It creates a poison. Last week we talked about the subject of creating a happy home. One of the best things that we can do when we want to move forward and create happiness is that we need to let go of hating one another. If somebody is different to you, then that's okay, because my brother, my sister, Allah made him that way, or Allah made her that way. For as long as they don't affect you in a negative manner, then we must coincide with different communities in the form of peace. Today, if we look at our communities, we have a huge uprising in the destruction of family ties. Many cases where brother doesn't talk to brother. Many cases where sisters don't talk to sisters, or brothers don't talk to sisters, and vice versa, even between parents and children and parents. So if this is what we still hold on to today, after we have been given examples within our own history, where we've lost, just by one example of Srebrenica, more than 8,000 people at the hands of hate, and we still hold on to these feelings of hate today, then we need to ask ourselves, have we actually learned anything from these events? You know, we talk about the issue of Palestine, and may Allah protect and save the people of Palestine from the atrocity that takes place. But what can you and I take from these events that go across the world, that we see on a day-to-day basis? What is it? Because we need to ask ourselves, the same bombs of hate that were there today, are those same bombs of hate present within ourselves, within our communities? And if they are, then who is it that's making these? Who is it that's creating this hate? Is it you and I? Because the people that were there, the Bosnia and Serb militia, they're not here today in the communities of Bultuli. You and I are present in the communities of Bultuli or in the communities of Birmingham. And yet we have problems with our communities where people hate one another. Our youngsters hate one another to the point we have stabbings and mass murder, criminality, violence. Why? Because we need to ask ourselves, have they learned hate from us being the elders, or have we shown love? Because Islam, our history, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has shown us what? that spread nothing but love on this earth. And he says in his famous hadith that a Muslim is who is the one where the rest of mankind is safe from his tongue, the way he speaks, the way he is, the way he interacts, and the way he makes somebody else feel. That's the first thing, that your presence must make someone else feel soft, somebody else feel comfortable. So there needs to be a what? A spread of love. That's the theme that Islam talks about. History shows the destruction from the spreading of the theme of hate. It cost the lives of Muslims in our own history. And it still today costs the lives of many in our own close communities. But Islam teaches us that you must spread love through good character. And then the Prophet ﷺ goes on to say in the same hadith that he explains who the Muslim is. And then he says, the believer, the one who believes, the one who accepts my message, is what, or is who? Is the one who people can entrust their life or their item of livelihood and their wealth within a person. I.e., a person who is soft, a person who shows love, a person who is trustworthy. So in history, when we find events like the likes of Srebrenica, when we see the loss of our Muslim brothers and our Muslim sisters, then we need to understand that if these things are being filled with hate, then the best way to respond to this is by doing what? Completely doing the opposite. That create the sense of love in your own home. So there is never a time or a place where genocides like the past take place as genocides in your homes today. The bombs of the past shouldn't be the bombs in our community. And when I say bombs in our community, I mean the bombs of the lack of spirituality in your heart. This is a disease. It's like a cancer that will eat your family, that will eat your life, that will eat you as a person, and it will affect every single person around you. And this will then turn the message of love that you were supposed to be putting out to people, it will then turn this into the theme of hate. And the way 8,000 people died in the past or in our history, your heart will die, and the people around you, their hearts will die too. So the message that I would like you to take home today, my brothers, my sisters, is that we have had many events in the past, many lives have been lost, and often we feel hurt. And by all means, we should feel hurt, no doubt. The entire Muslim Ummah is like a body. If one part aches, then the rest of the body aches. So if people on a different part of the world are feeling pain, are feeling loss, or are in a state of oppression or sadness or misery, then yes, you and I sitting here today must feel something in our hearts. If we don't, then we need to ask ourselves some serious questions as to what's going on. Why is it that we don't feel moved by events happening to our Muslim brothers and sisters? But it does not stop there. The journey starts there. We need to ask, why is it that we are in this position, and what can I do to respond to the evil that goes on? The Prophet ﷺ says, and I will finish with this hadith, that if you see an act of evil or an act of wrong, then you are obliged to do something. What? The first thing you do